What's going on, guys? I haven't posted a video in like 2 weeks. I just took a little bit of time off to, recover mentally. The last few videos though that I did release were actually covering the 10.1 tier sets for tanks and or showcasing some of the trinkets in the next patch. With patch 10.1 around the corner, I really wanted to just check in and update all of you on any major changes with those sets that were worrisome or any changes to the trinkets that may have happened. There are some great updates, so let's check them out. First things first, we have the Blood Death Knight. If you missed me going over that tier set, you can catch that video by clicking the link in the corner of the screen, as long as I actually remember to put it there. In that video, I discussed that the tier set bonus, while it did grant a mini version of Vampiric Blood, it did not interact with the talent Umbilicus Eternus. I'm not sure when this changed exactly over the last 2 weeks, but I'm happy to announce that it now does. This does not change much in our talent tree since Umbilicus was already a popular talent choice in Mythic Plus, but it's nice to see that the tier set now has an additional layer. Quickly, there are a few caveats to this though. If you proc the Vampiric Blood from the tier set, it's going to extend whichever Vampiric Blood you have active as well as your Umbilicus. You will only gain the shield once Umbilicus Eternus, the buff, actually expires completely. This can be a good or bad thing depending on how you want to look at it, but if you want the shield earlier, but if you get lucky with procs, like you'll have to wait for that buff to actually apply. At the end of the day though, I don't think that's going to be really problematic since Vampiric Blood is already insanely strong of a cooldown. With some of the light testing that I did in Freehold, with this change, Umbilicus is actually doing an insane amount of heavy lifting when it comes to healing. And it has close to about, it has between like a 45 and 50% uptime. All in all, with this change, the Blood Death Knight has one of the more engaging tier sets out of the bunch, and I'm stoked to see how it does this tier. Similar to the Death Knight, the first iteration of this tier set was a letdown. Essentially, the 2-set bonus applies a damage over time effect to any target hit by Avenger Shield. The major letdown originally about this set was that Divine Toll didn't apply the dot, and neither did Divine Resonance that followed. This resulted in a very low damage profile from the tier set. And on top of that, the 4-set proc was roughly about a 20% chance on your judgments landing as a critical strike. And with that, critical strike has never really been that popular of a stat for Protection Paladin anyways. But even with this set, it didn't really incentivize stacking crit. Luckily, this set has been updated. Divine Toll now provides even more burst damage and sustained damage since it now is applying Heartfire. The Grand Crusade proc as well from the 4 set has also been increased. While it's, random based on crits, it generally seems to happen about a third of the time, so 33%, which is much better than the previous 20% chance. While the tier set doesn't change much about the Paladin's playstyle or build, it is a nice little passive damage and healing increase. I know the set has gotten a lot of backlash, but Paladin is already extremely strong in its current state, so I don't feel like it needs the extra little buffs that tertiary power sources like tier sets can provide. And while this class hasn't changed much, I didn't ever talk about the Guardian Druid. I did a video, it was actually my first tier set video review, whatever you want to call it, for this next patch, but I did it before Mythic Plus was even available to be tested on the PTR, so I spent most of the time just theory crafting and sitting in a training dummy. What's really cool about this tank and the new set, the set is kind of centralized on this notion of increased Mangle, Thrash, and Maul damage. It actually is looking to incentivize Ursoc's Fury play and Flashing Claws and Rays. So you might see a shift, at least from my testing, you might see a shift away from the Galactic Guardian talents. Things like Twin Moonfire, Galactic Guardian, Scintillating Moonlight. And that change might be a little bit more interesting for some Guardian Druids. I know people don't necessarily like or enjoy the kind of passive Moonfire playstyle. It's fun, it's cool to see, but this tier set may open up additional builds for Guardian Druids looking to pursue Mythic Plus at least. Again, the tier set itself didn't really change, but I just wanted to kind of talk about where the set kind of leans into. I actually did a test in Freehold, and I thought I had the tier set for this next upcoming season on, and I had the old set on, and I was really tanky. I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. And then I looked and I was like, oh, I forgot to equip it. And then I went back and I equipped the season 2 set, and it actually felt weaker. So I found that kind of unique, but nonetheless, the set is still looking pretty good. It kind of gives a Guardian Druid an extra little defensive bonus through the kind of staggered type-esque damage profile from the tier set, and it's giving you the option to play Ursoc's Fury, which has always been kind of ever since Shadowlands, and I guess even before when it was a legendary, back in Legion, was always a very fondly remembered, aspect of the Guardian Druid tanking playstyle, so that might see a return in Season 2. And for the other tanks, there isn't much that changed that I'm aware of. All of the tier sets are pretty much the same, and they seem to interact appropriately with given talents or are generally pretty passive. There are two major changes to trinkets that I'd like to talk about. First, we have the Ward of Faceless Ire. This trinket actually got buffed. Its cooldown was reduced from 3 minutes down to 2 minutes, making it an extremely powerful trinket for both tanks and healers alike. This is a pretty massive shield trinket that can also be used on allies. The only downside to this is it'll only do damage if the shield breaks, but it's most comparable to the Decoration of Flame trinket. If you're a raider, you're going to want to keep an eye out for this. If you don't, well, luckily there are plenty of trinkets from Mythic Plus or even crafting. The other trinket that was changed was the Dragonfire Bomb Dispenser. This raid trinket was actually nerfed, and rightfully so. For those who don't remember what this trinket does, let me quickly go over it. This trinket gives you 3 charges of, bombs. Each charge has a 30-second cooldown, and the trinket itself has a 6-second internal cooldown. It is an unused trinket, and every time you use it, it'll apply a bomb to your target. After a few seconds, it's going to detonate for a ton of damage to that target. But if the target dies before it expires, it will instead do a fair bit of AoE. What was originally cool about this trinket is that you can recover charges by critically striking. Previously, it was only 30 critical strikes, and after doing so, you would instantly recover 1 charge of your bomb. This trinket, though, was extremely busted for classes that had high critical chance or fast-paced damage profiles like Brewmaster or Havoc Demon Hunters. This was updated from 30 critical strikes all the way to 60. In quick pulls, at least in Mythic Plus, this trinket is fine, but in longer pulls or single target encounters, this was a pretty major hit to the trinket. It still does a fair bit of damage, but it was definitely pulled in line with other trinkets, and other classes that weren't extremely crit focused may just end up utilizing other trinkets for their class. Now, this last part is a quick departure from talking about trinkets, but I've been asked a whole lot about what tank I'm going to play, which tanks are going to be good, which sets are you excited for, and I want to briefly answer that based off of the tier sets, the new Mythic Plus pool, and the new raid. I personally think that with the current Mythic Plus meta, it's going to remain mostly the same. Protection Paladins and Protection Warriors I think will still dominate the majority of the leaderboard, though I do expect Death Knights to be our resident sleeper this tier. For the first season, I actually predicted that Prop Paladin would show up at some point, and, well, look at where we're at now. When trying to predict or even just tell if a tank is going to be good or not, there are a ton of factors you need to look at, from tier sets to trinkets to secondary stats and item level scaling, all the way to content design and just like overall tuning of the class. I'm going to do a full prediction or a full deep dive or whatever you want to call it in the near future, so if you'd like to see that, consider subscribing. But that's pretty much going to wrap everything up I wanted to talk about. With the new tier right around the corner, I'm going to be doing my best to keep you all updated on the tanks along the way, along with some new guides for the new season. Let me know what tank you guys are planning on playing in the comment section below, and I'm going to catch you all in the next one. Peace.